Hello,
Hi,
everybody. Hi,
hi,
Ha.
hi.
I'm so excited about this conversation. I think I say that every time when I do a live stream. For this particular discussion, it's all around learning to be a better leader and learning to improve our leadership skills, um, which is so important for all of us to get better at. It's also a very, I feel it's a hard thing to learn because it's fluffy, it feels fluffy, and
It does.
it doesn't really feel concrete. And that's why I am excited to talk more about this topic. And before we get into um, our agenda items, Ha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. First, hi Nancy. Thank you very much for having me on your live stream today. Um, Hi to everyone who's watching this live stream. I am Ha. Ha Tran is the full name. I am from Vietnam originally, and I didn't leave the country until I was in my late 20. um, and for the last 10 years, I've been to Europe, West, like no, the east part, California, and all over the place in the U.S. Now I have a career in tech, and looking back, I really appreciate like all the support, all the lesson that I've taken along the way to get me to where I am today. And I feel fortunate enough that along the way I had the opportunity to engage with so many individuals who have questions around my journey, what make my journey different, and what kind of leadership skill that land me in my position today. And I'm excited to share with you some of that, some of the lesson that I brought with me along my journey today.
That's so great. And I want to know, how did you get into coaching? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's actually, it actually happened in the sneakiest way. I was just working with different team member. I wasn't even a manager when I started. And then I have team member come find me first to confine a lot of like the challenges that they were working on, and then allowing me to uh, share input and advice on how to deal with such situations. And from time to time, they keep coming back, and that is where I know it's like I'm adding value, like I'm being able to help friends and colleagues. I've done that almost at all of the last position that I was in. Like it started as as a conversation seeking advice, and it repeat, and then I know we have a coaching relationship. Um, in my latest, in the last position, I was working with a CEO of a very young startup. I started out on an operational project with him, and by the end of the project, he was like, "You are really good at coaching. I think you should start your own business around coaching." And I was like, hmm, that really makes me think because this is not the first time, but definitely very encouraging. And he even says, like, you start your business, I'll bring you clients. And I was like,
Oh,
okay, we
wow.
have a deal. So I took that motivation and just, be more open about like being a coach and accepting new new client
Yes.
that I can coach.
What is the difference between a coaching relationship versus a more casual, just asking for advice type of relationship?
Yeah, it so the difference is when so let me address like overall there's a lot of overlaps because
Mm,
at the end of the day you are giving advice, you are giving exercise, homework to help the individual become better version of themselves. The difference is now that I want to officially go into doing business based on coaching, um, there's an element of like this is an engagement, there's commitment from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I need in terms of commitment from my client to make this coaching relationship work. While for a casual coaching relationship, it's more like, oh, we are friend and we are colleague, and there's some project that we're working on together. This is the skill that they want to work on, and I explicitly um, coach them through that with specific example, and also with the working relationship.
Why do you think a coaching relationship should be um, treated seriously and it's kind of like a longer term engagement versus one off here and there?
Yeah, um, I think for both casual and like client and coach relationship, it should be both like longer engagement, because coaching is not something that you do one session and it's done.
Yeah.
You do have enlightenment moment, but it doesn't happen like that. It requires commitment,
Mm-hmm.
because coaching is not like the magical world or something new that was just invented. It's just like exercise. Like if you want to get muscle,
Right.
you gotta work on it every day. You
Yes.
have to have a routine. You have to have commitment. You have to get the right exercise to get that muscle, to
Right.
get that strength, right? So coaching is the same. Once you engage with a coach, you identify the skill set that you want to work on, and you have to commit to doing the exercise that the coach is giving you,
Yes.
and committing your time and make it into a routine
Right.
until it becomes second nature, right? So that's
Yeah, that resonates. How much can you get done in one session? Maybe the tactical work, but there's
the
an element that I found, which
mhm,
is inner work, which takes time to
mhm.
process your feelings. It takes time to shift into a new way of thinking, and that to me is the part that can take more time than most people realize.
Yeah, it definitely, there's no framework or like standard timeline for a
Yeah.
breakthrough. It depends on the skill set that you're working on, and also how the person's mindset shifting, like the speed at which their mind is
Right.
shifting. Um, it could be as easy as one story in one session, but
Right.
it could be as long as 5 sessions. One of my clients had um, the skill set that they were working on at the time was, how do I have a difficult conversation with the team, with my team member, and not in a threatening way, but not in a like super soft way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That takes a long time. That
Yeah.
takes 4 sessions before the aha moment. Not to mention, it also take for lack of a better word, damages from not being able to follow the exercise correctly,
Yeah.
for us to get to the point where we say, this is a turning point. We have to change this kind of behavior. So
Right.
it really depends on the progress of each person, and
Yeah.
yeah, and how receptive um, their mind is.
What do you think makes it difficult for us to shift um, into a different um, way of thinking? What makes it hard? Why can't we just shift like this?
Yeah, it's easy to think of it as like, oh, and in fact, mind power, willpower is something that could be the hardest to turn around.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the quickest, because it can flip like that. The reason that it is hard is because um, the our instinct, we are built that way. We
Mm-hmm.
are built to always scan for threat. So change is definitely a threat. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how do I perceive this change? Is it threatening to my existence?
Right.
or to my well-being.
Right.
And then your mind kind of doing its job of protecting you, essentially.
Right.
Like, okay, let's see this. How do I benefit from this change? Why do I have to change? There's a lot of analyzing going on.
Right.
That's why it takes time for analyzing, recognizing, acknowledging,
Right.
actually applying.
Yes. Oh, resonates so much. All right. Let's talk about what we had prepared on our agenda. Let's start
Yeah,
with the first foundational question. What is leadership and what does leadership mean to you?
yeah. So go back to one of the things that you shared at the beginning. You feel like leadership can be fluffy
Mm-hmm.
because there's no framework. It can be so many things. And the hard truth is, it is. Leadership can mean a lot of things to different people, and leadership also take various forms. That's why it's not easy to grab this one thing and say, this is leadership.
Right.
When I was at Portland State University working with a few professors on, particularly on leadership, one thing that I learned that I still remember until this day is that you become a leader when people willingly follow you.
Mm.
Um, so the job of a leader is to guide, inspire, influence people around them so that they are very important, willingly follow their lead. This is where we also talk about the difference between a leader and a manager, because we live in a world where our manager oftentimes position themselves as a leader, right? That makes things even more convoluted. Like, okay, is my manager a leader? Yes, they can be, because there's a lot of overlaps between being a manager and being a leader. But essentially, being a leader is leading without authority.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't give you a performance score, for example. I don't decide your employment the continuous of your employment or the termination of it. Um, but then, as a manager, you do have that power. Like, just let's just be real about that. So then, when you don't have power and people still respect and follow your vision, that is when you know you are a leader, right? And because it doesn't involve authority, you can work in however form of leadership that you want. A lot of people, for a lot of people, it might mean I want people to support me with my initiative. For a lot of people, it might mean I communicate really well and people
Mm-hmm.
understand um, the point of view that I'm trying to make, and that's it, right? So you have to really define what leadership means to you. Now, at this point, you may ask, like, okay, that's not helpful because it's still very big. But remember, you are a leader when you guide, inspire, and influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And the result of it is people willingly follow you.
Mm. Well, can you say that again? Guide,
Guide,
inspire,
inspire, influence,
influence. Got it.
right?
Can you be a leader if you only have one of the three or two of the three, or you need all three?
Um, that is an interesting point to make, right? Because all of these three things they intertwine, right?
Mm-hmm.
You um, kind of like you can't guide people if you don't inspire them, or you can't influence people if they don't feel inspired by the vision that you are
Right.
painting, by the direction that you are heading, or you can influence people if they can't understand the guide, the the goal or the step that you map out for them. So these are the three things that really intertwine and work with each other to make a really good leader.
What happens when your management doesn't have these traits?
A lot of things can happen, and it's not depends on one thing. Like when you say management, it involves a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are more than one person in the equation. There's a leader
Mm.
slash manager, and then
Right.
there's the team. So it also depends on the dynamic of the team, right? One example that I can take though is that one dynamic is the leader is not strong, but the team member is very strong,
Mm,
right? So now it's if the leader can't manage that kind of dynamic, like having someone better than me reporting
mm,
to me, then that team's not going to work. Like
right.
the individual will feel like there's no direction, no one understand me, there's no path forward. And the manager is kind of like try to manage the team that he or she feel like bigger than him or herself, right? So this is just one example of how this dynamic play out for management. But yeah, leadership alone is just one part of the equation.
How do we learn to do these three things better? How do we learn to guide better, to inspire better, and to influence better?
Yeah. So it really comes in different form. Um, and it also depends on very particularly like your job or like professionally your job and personally what you're dealing with. um, it so guide, inspire, influence in any situation. You have to first locate yourself.
Mm,
Like where are you, right? What's your surrounding? What do you have to work with? Like
mm,
in professional setting, that mean what is your position? What is your intended impact in the team, in the org that you are in? From there, you kind of identify what kind of guy, what kind of inspiration you want to project to the team. But then other step, like you have to also analyze your audience. Um,
mm-hmm,
how do they process information? How do they prefer to be guided or inspired? Right?
mm-hmm,
Because a method that works really well for, let's say, a product manager may not work really well for an engineer.
mm,
So that's why you really have to organize your surrounding, um, your audience, what
right.
you're working with, before kind of crafting the vision, the direction. Like this is where I am heading.
Mm-hmm,
So come back to my definition of a leader. Like if people are to follow you, you need to be very clear about where you are and where you're heading and how you're getting there.
mm,
That's the only way people will look at you and say, "Oh, Nancy, she knows exactly where she is. She knows exactly where she is heading,
mm,
and like here's a bunch of reasons why it is a good decision. I'm going
mm,
to follow her." So it's very similar to that. To that.
mm. This takes us to the follow up question, which is who should practice leadership? Is it everybody?
Yes, you are correct. And I hope it's not a surprise that everyone should practice leadership. I often hear other friends or colleagues saying, but I'm not, I don't plan on becoming a manager. Do I really need to practice leadership? The answer is you do. There's one person in this whole world, and the most important person you need to lead, that is yourself.
Mm,
So, to be able to become the best version of yourself, to be able to have personal development, you need leadership. You
mm,
need to lead yourself. A lot of us believe that if I'm good, I'm just going to be good. No, that's not going to happen.
mm,
If you're good, you still need to practice, have discipline, have routine to set you up to become the better version of yourself, to have growth from year over year, from one position to another. Um, and secondly, when you go to work, you by nature will be interacting with other people.
mm-hmm,
And the byproduct of that is you have to know how to work with like different stakeholder around you as well because
yeah.
we are each of us are unique in this whole world. So like I don't naturally like or know how best to work with Nancy, for example. But I will learn. I
Mm,
will notice how she works, how she process information, how she asks questions, how to influence her, how to how to guide her, how to inspire her even, right?
Mhm.
So these are all the things that you need to notice,
Mm.
reflect, learn, reiterate. You
Yeah.
might make a lot of mistakes along the way as well, but these are all part of personal development
Mm.
through leadership that you need to form to practice for yourself. So to answer your question,
Mm.
everyone should practice this.
If it's everyone, then how do we develop these skills? You mentioned routine. What does that mean?
Yeah. So routine is actually come after you already know how to develop leadership skill, right?
Mm.
Um, we in the world of practicing leadership, I believe that everything comes from inside.
Mm.
So you have to really look deep inside you and understand what I am looking for in my personal development and what skill set do I need to get there. So one example is like I only know this when I look back upon reflection 5 years ago when I work on um, a project or pitching an idea. I often thought to myself, like, I have a great idea. How come nobody listened to me? And then someone else pitching virtually the same idea and they got so much traction, they got so much resources to work on it. And then when I look back and also see how other people do it, I was being honest with myself. Okay, I didn't have one, two, three, while this person showed that one, two, three. Like it can be like return on investment, the timeline, the urgency, all of that. That's why even though we have the same pitch, mine didn't land as well as theirs, right? So the first step to develop your leadership skill is to reflect,
Mm.
look deep inside you, understand yourself, understand your strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even want to write it down. And this is not something that you do. You set aside 2 hours, sit down, and you can identify. It takes a lot of time to do it. Like
Ongoing. It's an ongoing process.
it's routine, right?
Yeah.
And once you do that, once you realize your weakness and your strength, try to put it in perspective. Like either it is professionally or personally, with the career trajectory that I have for myself, for example. How do I like what is the gap from where I am today with my strengths and weaknesses and where I want to be, let's say in 2 years from now, right?
Right.
What are the gaps? And then highlighting the skill that you want to earn, to build during this time. It might be empathy, prioritization, persuasion, communication. You have to project it, right? And
Mm.
this is this is where if you feel like it's difficult, you can work with a friend or a coach to help you identify it. Through storytelling, through reflection, they will help you figure it out.
Mm.
Um, Once you have identified the skill that you want to develop, now now is the time to make a plan on how are you going to acquire this skill.
Mm.
Again, it can come in many form. Like you can read a book, you can watch a lot of TED Talk or video on how to practice these skills. You can also work with a coach um, or a friend, but find an option that works best for you
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that you hold yourself accountable for practicing it. Um,
Right.
a dream is a wish without practice, right? So hold yourself accountable. If you
Right.
need to involve someone, do that. Like,
Right.
hey, hey friend, this is a skill that I'm trying to practice. I want to check in with you every 2 weeks or every month, and I want you to check on one, two, three, and make sure you repeat it. Make sure you
Right.
get into the habit of constantly reflecting and getting the feedback that you need, right?
Right.
So those are the things that I would do.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, specific to product managers, what advice do you have for us in terms of leadership
Yeah,
quality?
I feel like this is where um, there's so many skills. the PM want to acquire. Even leadership alone, there's a lot. Is communication, empathy, um, decision making, and all that. At the core of it, or in my experience working with PM, what I love the most, like this is my cue to know that this is a good PM, is that they have empathy, to understand users' pain point. Um, One of my favorite person on the PM side I work with, they were telling me about how they were sitting on a train, seeing other user pull up their phone, trying to use the product, and see how they kind of got really confused on which button to click, and they cringe. They sit there and they cringe and like, oh my god, I wish I can help. Like to me, that is a really good sign that you are a good PM, right? Because if you don't care, then you might as well do something else. So
Mm.
to me, number one is empathy to understand users' pain point.
Mm.
Secondly, it's about prioritizing because I again in my experience, PM will get input from different sources like focus group, um, user study, uh, product feedback, uh, support ticket, all of that. So you have a list of so many feature ask
Mm.
or bug to fix, but you have to be able to um, prioritize. And that is not just like, okay, this seems important, I want to pick this. And Nancy, you know this because you're a PM yourself. So do your research, back it up with data,
Mm.
and eventually come up with the list of things that you will work on first and be able to explain really well why you are focusing on this
Right.
area. Because the next thing is communication. Now you have a vision, you have a priorities, but
Mm.
if it doesn't resonate with your team, guess what?
Right.
No one will follow you.
Right.
So we go back to like, if you're a leader, people will follow you. So
Right.
so by no means this is the playbook for PM, but in my personal opinion, for PM, I would advise that we focus on empathy, prioritization, and communication.
Communication is huge.
It is.
All right, we have some questions from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Mushumi. Hi, Mushumi.
Mm-hmm.
Does it always need a lot of experience to become a leader in a specific field?
That question is very interesting because I'm paying attention to the word need. Um, you know, when I pay attention to the word need, I will tell
Mm.
you right away, no. Leadership or being a leader is not a certificate that you acquire by passing an exam or a test.
Yeah.
It is something that you do. So, and you don't have to ask for permission to lead. That doesn't mean you will get it right the first time,
Mm.
but put yourself out there. Be the leader that you want to be. You might make mistake, and that's part of the learning. That's part of the progress. Um, so no, you do not need a lot of experience, but you need to be candid about you know um, how you lead, uh, because if you, I know a lot of people are saying like fake it until you make it, um, and this is where I want to challenge it, because becoming a leader you have to be authentic, because
Mm.
if you fake it, people can smell it miles away. So while you don't need experience, you do need authenticity.
I would say I have definitely worked with leaders in the past who don't have a lot of experience.
Hmm. Yeah,
So the term need here is subjective. Some
yeah,
people think you need, some people don't. And there's evidence that you don't.
yeah.
But how did they do it? I don't really know. But all I know is it is possible. All I know is it's been done before. All I know is that person's quality was seen by the organization.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it happened.
yeah. For sure. And also, when we say experience, it is also a point of debate, right? Because um, are you talking about professional experience or about personal experience? And the thing is, we can't really decouple them
Mm,
because my personal experience also make me a good leader just
right.
as much as my professional experience. So to add on top of this, I would say don't discount how
Yeah.
much experience you have because experience is the whole you, personal and professional. It's not just like, oh, I have 2 years of experience. Am I a leader? Um,
I do think that, people say there are natural leaders. It- There's qualities in them that just shines through regardless of their age or regardless of their experience. It's a quality that is innate. And for the people who want to foster and invest more in themselves so that this natural ability comes across more,
mhm.
that can be done through practicing, through learning. But just like everything else, some people are better at some things naturally compared to other people.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I would just say, you know, um, this is probably my pet peeve, but I'm not a fan when someone say like I'm naturally good at so and so.
Mm,
Especially when you talk about leadership. It's for one, I don't think it's true. Whether you
mm.
naturally, they may have experience, they may learn from their the challenges or their failure. We just don't know. But saying something like that make people feel like, oh, I wasn't born to be a leader, so maybe I'm not good at this, right? It's
That's
discouraging.
true. Yeah. Yeah. The spirit of it is we all have skill sets that we're naturally good at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's about fostering
Yes.
the skills that are needed.
Mm-hmm.
And one set of skills might be needed in one organization
Mm-hmm.
versus a different set of skills are needed in a different organization. It's
Yep.
all leadership skills, but it depends also on the environment that you're in and what type of leadership skills are needed in that particular environment.
For sure.
Next question, also from Mushumi: how to build communication skills to become a strong leader?
Yeah. And you know, communication is very important in everything that we do. As once you join the workforce, and just like leadership is not vast enough, communication is also um, like a very big general topic. So the first step is to narrow down what your communication needs. Um, so so for example, so let's just say in this context, and with respect to the question, communication skill to become a strong leader, I would go back to guide, inspire, and influence, right? And to make a strong leader in communication, you have to be very clear with the goal of your communication. If,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, you show up to your follower with a speech, and at the end of it, they can't tell, what is the goal, what do they go home with, then
Mm-hmm.
that is a big red flag, right? So the first thing is identify, you know, the goal of your communication, and then based on that goal, sharpen the skills that help you achieve that goal. So let's say you communicate to get buy-in is very different from communicate to negotiate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the first thing is have a clear goal for communication. Um, the second thing is um, I would go back to my earlier example, understanding the audience that you're communicating to. A lot of time we underestimate um, the importance of understanding your audience. For me, either my audience is one person or a group, I spend equally, if not more time preparing on how I speak to the audience. So let's say I have an important analysis that I spent the last month working on, but I would spend equally, like another month or so, prepare the mindset. Like, how do I get in front of this audience?
Right.
Um, how do I anticipate the question that they may ask? How do I anticipate their anxiety and address it before they even bring it up?
Right.
How do I frown upon or not frown upon when they ask question? Because it does happen, especially when you communicate to upper leadership. They will push the limit. And if you walk into a meeting expecting, oh, my analysis is good, no one's going to question it, you are in for a treat, right? So prepare yourself, know your audience, and prepare yourself accordingly
Yeah.
is a huge step to set you up for success. With these two simple things, you already nail a strong communication skills.
Makes a lot of sense. Know your audience.
Yeah,
Next question. How do we overcome imposter syndrome?
this is a huge one. Um, First, I just want to acknowledge that imposter syndrome happened to everyone, even high achiever. Um, Sheryl Sandberg, like I'm a huge fan. I read Lean In 10 years ago. Um, and even in the book, she admitted that she has imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
There was a line in the book about, if I didn't mess up or even excel, there it is again, I fool people. So just understand that imposter syndrome happened to everyone.
Hmm.
Um, so, and then understand why it happened. It happened for a lot of reasons. But the two bigs are, you know, you may be discounting the achievement that you have because you don't have a chance to talk about it more often. I don't know about everyone, but I grew up in a culture where it is almost forbidden to talk about my accomplishment as I did this, like pounding on my chest and saying, I actually achieved this. It's advised to always say, like, oh, I have help from senior people or friends or teacher, or oh, I got lucky. So the culture really impacted how I
Yeah.
perceive my achievement. That's one. And two, it's also about benchmarking yourself against other people. I can't count all the conversation over the years when my friend come to me saying, "Oh, so and so just become VP or just achieve so and so award,"
Yes.
and that makes me feel insecure.
Yes.
Like, okay, you did that, but don't, because um, you are on your own trajectory. And it might not always look like upward and to the right. It might look like this, but it will go up and to the right eventually. So just know that you're on your own path. You might encounter a challenge, a failure every now and then, um, and that's okay. So this is a huge step. Like one, be aware that it's happened to everyone. Two, it's okay if it happened. Um, And I mean, I can list out like 20 tactical things for you to battle imposter syndrome. But again, these two things will set the stage. And then one more thing that Nancy and I are aligned and a huge fan of is that look inside you. Like everything that you're looking for, if you are expecting it to come from something or someone else, that is where you will always have the stress. You will always feel like I'm a fraud, I'm not enough. But if you can have that inner voice that say, I am enough,
Mm-hmm.
that will be that will be a big push to boost confidence, to not feel like, oh, because of this one mistake, this is who I am. So
There's some tactical things that we could do here. One is really observe and, like you said, acknowledge the feelings that we're feeling. Oh, this person achieved so much in such a short period of time.
Yes.
I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good enough. So first observe, and then we want to peel the onion a little bit. Why do I feel
Mhm.
that way? What is it really about that person? Or is it coming from somewhere within us?
Mhm.
And I would hypothesize it's probably not about that person. It's probably about us, something that we struggle with, something that has happened in the past that made us feel defeated or not good enough, etc. So, what is it that happened in the past that made me feel this way?
Mhm.
Oh, my teacher said this when I was in fifth grade. Oh, my mom said this, right? Oh, but my manager said this about me. So then now we're looking at what happened that made me feel this particular feeling.
Yeah.
And then we want to tease out what is factual and what is not factual. So just because this thing happened when I was in fifth grade, is that still true? Maybe it was true at that point in time, but
Mhm.
years have passed. I've grown, I've learned. Is it still true? Is it ultimately the truth? Is it my truth? Maybe it's not anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not my truth anymore. What can I do to let that go? And I give myself permission to let go of that part of my memory because it's not serving me anymore in this particular situation. So I'm going
Yeah.
to say, I see you. I know where you came from. Now I'm going to let you go because you're not true anymore. Right? So these are just some of the tactical things that helps me process the feelings that come up. And again, like Ha said, it's all inner work because no one else can fix my imposter syndrome. I'm the only one who can fix it.
Yeah. I mean, one more thing that I want to add um, is to what caused imposter syndrome. Um, what Nancy talked about is basically made me think about this. There are reasons that you can control, like inside you, how you perceive your achievement and other people's achievement, and there are factors that you can't control. For example, how society perceive achievement, benchmarking achievement, um, or even perceive you when you talk about your achievement. These are all factors that you cannot control. So that's why my advice is the best thing you can do is be aware that this exists. Um, and then again, come back to what Nancy just shared. Come back to your what you can control, your inner work.
Hmm.
Look deep inside you. Look at your strength. Be proud of it. Validate what is factual, what is not. I mean, basically, do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to like either validate some of the thought that you have, and try to get yourself out of the feeling like, oh, I'm a fraud, I'm not enough, because there's a good chance that you are enough and you are good.
Yeah.
Because because with your experience with the thing, with the challenges that you've been through, I'm sure that there's a great version of you that you need to recognize.
Yes. And recognition also comes from within. First, we need to recognize ourselves before other people will recognize us.
Yeah.
All right. We have a question from the audience.
Hmm.
How do you prepare your mindset and gain skill sets from IC to leadership roles?
This is an interesting question. um, I don't know if you here with us from the beginning, but I was talking about how we live in a world where our manager oftentimes refer to themselves as a leader, and they're not wrong. And a manager role and a leader role have a lot overlap. Um, but essentially, being a leader is very different from being a manager. And I think what you're asking here is how do I gain skill set to go from being an IC to become a manager? Let me know if I'm wrong. But basically, that is a different topic. um, I would say that is a different topic, but the process can be repeatable, which is basically you're here today as an IC and you want to go to manager. You just need to first assess, evaluate yourself. What is your strength? What is your weaknesses? And for the manager role that you are aiming for, what skills is needed? And then have like, what is the timeline that you want to get to the manager position? And then map out how are you going to gain the skill needed to become the manager. Adjust the timeline if you have to. If you are like crunching time, then look for ways to leverage it, like working with a mentor, working with a coach, working with a support group. There are so many options these days. But basically, that is the process to identify skills and acquire this new skill set.
I would add, because part of the question is how do we prepare the mindset? Well, step
Right.
one to preparing mindset is getting clear on what we desire. Sometimes we get into this loop of judging us, judging ourselves for a particular desire that we want.
Yeah.
But I would say if I have a particular desire, then there is nothing wrong with that desire. I'm going to honor my desire because the desire is placed in me for a reason. I might not know what that reason is yet, but I know I should honor it. So, for example, before I switched into PM, I had a desire to switch. I couldn't really verbalize why. I just knew that I wanted it. It's kind of like the same thing as me saying I love to drink boba. It is my desire to drink boba every week. I can't really explain why other than I just like it. And so I'm going to honor it. So, first step is to get really clear on the desire to get into a leadership role in this case. Next step is now that I honor this desire and that I know this desire is good because I ultimately believe that I will be a good leader and what are the benefits of me being a good leader, then I could inspire other people, then I could guide other people, then I could do X and Y and Z and it's going to make them feel so much better when their leader is a good leader, right? So I could go on and on about why my desire is good and the good changes that I could then make as a result of me having that desire. So if I'm going to have boba, then it's going to make me feel really good. I'm going to be really nice to my daughter because I'm in a good mood. Then she's happy. She gets to watch TV when I'm in a good, right? So I get make up all kinds of this ripple effect of what happens when I get what I want and how it benefits other people when I get what I want. So the
Yeah.
next step is what ideas do I have within me that tells me that I cannot have what I want?
Mhm.
What are my limiting beliefs? It is my job to shift away from every single limiting belief, and I would do whatever it takes to shift. That's how I would tackle the first piece, which is about mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, the reason I identified it as, essentially this question is about how do I gain the skill set to go from an IC to a manager? Because I also mentioned at the beginning, um, being a leader, you don't need authority. So if your desire is to get into a leadership position, you have to be, again, to Nancy's point, to be clear with yourself. Like, why do you want to be in a leadership position if you want to be a leader? Because it doesn't require authority to lead. You can lead from anywhere, even from an IC position. But if your desire is to become a manager and have more like authority, that becomes a different story. Then the question you ask yourself is, um, what kind of impact that I can make in a manager position that I can't do today? What I don't want everyone to do is look at kind of conventional career trajectory like anyone. You start as an IC, after a few years, you kind of expect to become a manager. Now, while a lot of people do that, that might not be the path, the best path for you if the desire is to lead. Because you don't need to sit on a management chair to lead people, right?
Mm,
That part we need to be clear with each other.
right, right. Super clear. And thank you for and bringing us back to that point. Let's
Yeah.
decouple the authority piece from
Mhm.
being a leader. And that takes us to the next follow up question. How does one lead without authority? And how do we measure performance as a leader?
Yeah. So, let me tell you a story. When I was in college, um, there was a professor that everyone respect, whether or not you have taken her classes or not. To the point that we have a final exam, and other professor kind of like managing that exam usually just like, oh, time's up, I'm going to go collect, and then they would go table by table and then come back to the first row again. This professor, before she go before the exam starts, she said this: at the end of this exam, I'm going to pass by each table once. If I can't collect your paper, you missed the exam. So virtually, the way I think about it is she doesn't have authority, as in she can't, fail any of us because she didn't teach that class. But when everyone think about her or listen to the way she communicates, everyone feel like, oh, she's being very clear on the impact of not following her instruction, her guideline, right?
Mm,
So come back to your question: how do one lead without authority? When you don't have authority, you have to build a wealth of what we call credibility, a track record of delivering what you promised to deliver, right? When you have credibility, it means people know you will do what you say you will do, right? Um, that is one piece. That's the foundation of it, right? Reliability, credibility. And then the second layer on top of that is quality, right? Um, the quality of the thing that you accomplish, that you done, that you deliver. Can we count on it to be good, to be as good as it could be? Um, that's the second layer on credibility, right? So over time, when people see that you consistently deliver what you promise at high quality, you start to build a wealth of credibility. So the next time you communicate, people know that, hey, when Masumi, sorry if I'm not sure if I can pronounce your name correctly, um, when Masumi have an initiative and ask everyone to carry out certain tasks and deliver certain output, she means it, and this has an impact, proven by her track record,
mm,
right? And then to the second part of your question, how to measure performance as a leader. Fortunately for all of us, there's no annual or biannual performance review for a leader. But also, unfortunately for us, because there's no measurement, how do I know I'm being a good leader? The good practice that I often get myself into is establish a channel for regular feedback, and just and make sure that you are being consistent in the way that you ask for feedback. It can be monthly or quarterly, but it can't be like, oh, I'm going to skip this because there was an accident or an incident that didn't reflect well on me.
hmm
I do it next time when I have a big celebratory achievement. You have to open a consistent channel for feedback. Second, you have to ask in a way that people will give you real feedback, actionable feedback. So what I mean by that is If you go to your colleague and say, "Am I a good leader?" In that very moment, of course they're inclined to say something like, "I think so," or "I think you're a good leader." So virtually, you're not giving them the space or the right mindset to give you good feedback. The way I often do it is I set up a quarterly feedback with my team and say, "Hey, I really need your help. I'm working on so and so, name the skill. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to let me know from the experience working with me, what can I do better?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to think about it over the next week or 2 weeks if you need the time. But make sure to follow up. You will be surprised the detail that people can get to rather than just generally, am I a good leader? You're
Right.
basically asking a yes, no, and giving your audience an easy way out, right? So that's how I would how I would measure performance as a leader,
Right.
based on the feedback that people give you. And I'm not, again, I don't want to benchmark us as good or bad, but more so, how can I improve?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are already at the best, then is what is the point, right? So think about it as, how do I open a channel to continuously investing in my own personal growth
Right.
rather than how do I measure myself?
Right. It's
That,
just the framing, and it makes such a big difference.
mhm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One last question before we wrap, and the question is, what characteristics should we keep in mind to communicate like a leader? So we talked about communication is important. This is getting into the how. So I like the example you gave when you were in college. How did this professor communicate and have people like take it seriously without any authority?
Yeah. So it's just like, let's dive into that example, right? And what she said, she basically have three things in the short sentences that she communicate.
Mm,
One is the context, when the exam is over, right? And then what she need everyone to do, and when the exam is over, and when I walk to your desk. And then the next part is what she expect everyone to do.
mm,
I want you to hand over the exam paper. And the last part is the impact. If you fail to do so, I consider you missing the exam.
mm.
So with that, it's kind of like, okay, she's being very clear. The impact of like try to linger on my paper for 2 more seconds, and that gets everyone to respect that call to action.
Yeah. So
Because
it's setting the context
mhm, setting the
and
context, the call to the action that you need everyone to do,
mhm,
the impact
of not
that
doing it.
not doing it.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Anything
and
else?
No, and remember, she's not threatening anyone. She didn't make up the impact. She's just being factual about the
Mm,
impact. If you don't give me, I consider it that you missed the exam because I give you a chance to give me the
mm,
paper you didn't, right?
mhm,
So, in a way, I don't want you to think about it as she threatened everyone into action,
mm.
but set up the context, be clear about the action, and be clear about the impact. And most importantly, be factual.
Right. Being clear on the expectation is helpful
Right.
here.
Yeah.
She communicated what she expected, and then what happens if you don't meet that expectation.
Hmm. Yeah.
And if I were to dissect that a little bit, she must have felt really comfortable
Hmm.
delivering this communication.
Yeah. She's very comfortable.
Right.
I think, and that is a whole new exercise. Like,
Yeah.
how to be comfortable knowing that what you communicate can project disappointment. Like, oh,
Yes.
can you just give me 2 more seconds?
Yes.
Have to anticipate that kind of discomfort
Right.
and be okay, because the goal here is clear expectation,
Hmm.
clear impact. If you're
Right.
disappointed, you kind of have to work on it.
I could imagine if I were the one in that place in that time, and if I had any ounce of discomfort in my body, I could be saying the same exact words, but the audience might not have taken me seriously.
Hmm.
So it's
That,
not about, okay, this is the words to say, right? It's
yeah,
also the energy behind words.
yeah. And I'm sure she's comfortable because
Yeah.
she has been dealing with a lot of exam.
Yeah.
So experience is also key here.
Yes. 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 Oh, this conversation is so good. All right, we're at time, and I'm gonna put your QR code here on the screen for a 30-minute one-on-one that you're offering right now, complimentary
Hmm.
101. Yay! So, for anyone who wants to get to know how better, to learn more about her coaching services and what she believes in terms of leadership coaching, scan the QR code, and this is how you can find her.
Yeah.
Is there any parting words you have for us?
Yeah. I mean, I first thank you, Nancy, for having me on this session. I really enjoy all the question from the audience as well. Um, if anything, I just want to leave you with the fact that you become a leader when you have people following you.
Mm,
Um, that is inspirational, but also take a lot to go into the specific. So take time to reflect and think about what kind of leader you want to be, because
mm.
leadership again can take many form, various form, and choose the one that is most suitable for you.
I was just thinking, just look at all the presidents that we've seen in the past. We probably have resonated with some of the leadership skills and probably didn't resonate with the others. So it all comes in all kinds of different flavors.
For sure.
All right. Thank you so much, Ha, for joining us
Thank you
today.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.